Millions of people have stood right here to take a photo, never realizing they were standing directly above a sealed mass grave. Welcome, seeker of hidden truths. Before I ask you for a like, before I ask you to subscribe, before I ask you to believe anything, I want to make a deal with you. Stay with me until the end of this investigation. Because if, by the final minute, Petra still feels like only a beautiful ancient city carved into red stone, then do nothing. Do not like the video. Do not comment. Do not subscribe. But if, by the end, you realize that Petra's most famous monument may have been built over the dead for a reason far stranger than tourism, legend, or ordinary burial, then you will know what to do. For more than 2,000 years, millions of people have walked through the narrow canyon of the Sikh, stepped into the light, and stared at the impossible face of Al-Khazneh, the treasury of Petra. They photographed it. They admired it. They called it one of the wonders of the world. But almost none of them asked the most disturbing question: what was beneath their feet? Recently, beneath that iconic facade, archaeologists revealed a long-buried tomb. Inside were the remains of 12 people, ancient artifacts, and a mystery that immediately became wrapped in headlines, legends, and comparisons to the Holy Grail. But the bodies are not the deepest mystery. The cup is not the deepest mystery. The real question is this: why was Petra's most famous monument standing above a tomb? Was the treasury built to honor the dead, to hide them, to protect them, or to seal something into the memory of stone? Today, we are not simply entering Petra. Today, we descend beneath the postcard, beneath the tourist image, beneath the famous red facade, beneath the story that the modern world tells itself. Today we open the sealed threshold of Petra, and what waits below is not just archaeology, it is the forgotten language of the Nabataeans. To understand the mystery, you must first understand how most people have been trained to see Petra. You were shown the treasury as an image, a cinematic doorway, a desert miracle, a carved monument glowing in rose-colored rock. You were told it was called the treasury because people once believed treasure was hidden in the stone urn above its facade. You may have heard that bullets were fired at that urn by those trying to break it open and release the riches inside. And this is already important, because the modern imagination sees Petra through the idea of treasure, gold, objects, lost wealth, a secret chamber waiting to be opened. But ancient people did not always define treasure the way we do. To them, the greatest treasure was not always something you could carry away in your hands. Sometimes the treasure was memory, lineage, ritual, a soul preserved in the correct place, a doorway between the living and the dead. And this is where Petra begins to change, because Petra was not built like an ordinary city. It was carved. That one word matters. Carved, not assembled from loose stones, not placed on the landscape like a temporary human invention, but directly into the living mountain. The Nabataeans did not simply build in the desert. They entered the desert. They opened the rock. They turned cliffs into facades, tombs, sanctuaries, chambers, stairways, water channels, and sacred approaches. And when a civilization carves its sacred architecture into a mountain, it is not only making buildings, it is making contact with permanence. Stone outlives kings. Stone outlives language. Stone outlives empires. Stone outlives the names of the dead. So, when the Nabataeans placed their monuments into the rock, they were not merely decorating the desert. They were writing into the body of the earth. And if the treasury stands above a burial space, then the question becomes more powerful. Was this facade a monument? Or was it a marker? Was it an entrance? Or was it a veil? Was it meant to reveal greatness, or to conceal what greatness was built upon? This is the first key. In the ancient world, death was not always seen as an ending. Death was a passage, a change of state, a crossing from one visible realm into another invisible realm. Modern society hides death away. It sanitizes it. It separates the living from the dead. It teaches you to think of burial as disposal, as closure, as something placed out of sight, because life must continue without looking back. But ancient cultures often did the opposite. They placed the dead near the sacred. They built over them. They carved around them. They made the presence of the dead part of the landscape, because to them, the dead were not always gone. They were ancestors, guardians, witnesses, spirits of lineage, powers that could bless, warn, protect, or remember. And this may be the point modern people keep missing when they look at Petra. They see architecture. The Nabataeans may have seen a threshold. They see a facade. The Nabataeans may have seen a boundary between worlds. They see a tomb as a storage place for bodies. The Nabataeans may have seen the tomb as a chamber of transformation. And that is why the discovery beneath the treasury matters, even if some scholars warn that the headlines have been too dramatic. Because the true mystery is not whether a tomb existed in Petra. Petra is full of tombs. Burial spaces were part of its identity. The true mystery is placement. Why here? Why beneath this monument? Why beneath the structure that would become the face of Petra itself? The answer begins with the Nabataeans. For centuries, the Nabataeans were often misunderstood as simple desert traders. They moved goods across harsh landscapes. They controlled routes of incense, spices, aromatics, and precious materials. They mastered the desert not by fighting it, but by listening to it. They understood water. They understood stone. They understood distance. They understood timing. Petra became powerful because it was not only beautiful, it was strategic. It was a node in a living network of trade, movement, and survival. But a civilization that can make water obey the desert is not a primitive civilization. It is a civilization that understands hidden flow. And that phrase matters. Hidden flow. Water moving through channels. Caravans moving through routes. Wealth moving through markets. Ritual memory moving through tombs. Souls moving through the unseen path after death. The Nabataeans lived in a world where what was hidden often mattered more than what was visible. The visible facade may only have been the surface. The real system was beneath, the water below, the chamber below, the ancestors below, the meaning below. And once you see this pattern, Petra stops being a city of stone and becomes a city of layers, a city above and below, a city of entrances and sealed places, a city where the living walked among the architecture of the dead. This is not random. This is a worldview. And if you are beginning to see the pattern, comment this now. The tomb was a threshold, not because comments feed the algorithm, although they do, but because saying the phrase matters. It marks the moment you stopped looking at Petra as a ruin and started seeing it as a system. Now, let us go deeper. Al-Khazneh, the treasury, has always carried a strange identity. Its name suggests wealth. Its facade suggests power. Its fame suggests a monument made to impress the living. But the more you study it, the more uncertain it becomes. Was it a royal tomb, a ceremonial structure, a symbolic facade, a sacred marker, a monument connected to death, power, and continuity? Even archaeology approaches it with caution, because the Nabataeans did not leave behind the kind of written explanations modern people desperately want. There is no simple plaque saying, "This is exactly what this building means." And this silence is what makes Petra so powerful. Because when a civilization leaves behind stone but not enough words, the stone becomes the text, the facade becomes the sentence, the chamber becomes the paragraph, the placement becomes the message. And Al-Khazneh speaks in a language older than explanation. Look at its position. After the long passage through the Sikh, the treasury appears suddenly, dramatically, almost like a revelation. You do not approach it across an open field. You are funneled toward it through stone. Your vision is restricted. Your path is controlled. Your sense of scale is manipulated by the canyon. Then, in one moment, the rock opens, and there it is. The facade does not simply stand there. It appears. This matters because sacred architecture often controls perception. It narrows you. It darkens the path. It delays the reveal. It prepares the mind. Then it opens into awe. This is not only architecture. It is initiation. The viewer passes through confinement into revelation, through shadow into light, through the throat of the earth into the face of the monument. And now imagine that beneath this moment of revelation, there is a tomb, 12 bodies below, a sealed chamber below, that beneath the theatrical arrival of the living. Suddenly, the treasury is not only something you see, it is something you stand over. The experience becomes vertical, above the facade. Before you, the carved face. Beneath you, the dead. Around you, the mountain. Behind you, the dark passage of the Sikh. This is not a random tourist view. It is an alignment of body, stone, memory, and death. And this is where the modern mind begins to fail. Because modern people ask, what was the building used for? But ancient sacred spaces often ask a different question. What state of consciousness did this place create? What did it make you feel? What did it force you to remember? What invisible boundary did it make you cross? If Al-Khazneh was connected to burial, then it may not have been only a container for the dead. It may have been a machine of memory, a carved threshold designed to make the living confront the presence of those who came before. The Nabataeans may have understood something we have forgot, that the dead do not disappear from a civilization. They become its foundation, literally, symbolically, spiritually. The living city stands on the memory of the dead. And in Petra, that memory may have been placed beneath the most powerful facade of all. Now, pause here, because this is where many videos would chase the easiest mystery. They would ask, who were the 12 skeletons? Were they royalty, priests, victims, guardians, a hidden family, a sacred group? And those are important questions. But they are not the question that unlocks the deeper layer. The deeper question is not who they were. The deeper question is what their placement meant. 12 bodies beneath a monumental facade immediately activates the symbolic imagination. 12 is a number that appears again and again in human systems of order. 12 months, 12 zodiac signs, 12 divisions of time. 12 as a symbol of completeness, cycle, and cosmic arrangement. Does that mean the Nabataeans placed exactly 12 people there for that reason? We cannot honestly claim that, but we can say this. When a tomb beneath a sacred monument contains 12 ancient bodies, the modern mind sees a count. The symbolic mind sees a pattern, and ancient civilizations thought symbolically. They built symbolically. They buried symbolically. They aligned cities, temples, tombs, and routes according to meanings that were not always written down. This is why the discovery feels so magnetic. It sits at the intersection of fact and symbol. Fact, a tomb beneath the treasury. Fact, ancient human remains. Fact, artifacts. Fact, one of the most famous facades on Earth. Symbol, the dead beneath the monument. Symbol, the hidden beneath the visible. Symbol, the sealed beneath the celebrated. Symbol, the underworld beneath the tourist gaze. That is the pattern, and the pattern is stronger than the headline. If you are still here, this is the moment I will ask for something small. Not a like yet. I told you I will earn that at the end. But subscribe if this is the kind of hidden history you want more of. Because this channel is not here to repeat the surface story. It is here to descend under it. Now we must confront the most uncomfortable possibility. What if Petra was never meant to be understood only as a city? What if Petra was also a map of transition, a place where trade, death, water, stone, and ritual met in one hidden system? Think about how Petra works. The approach is narrow. The city is concealed. The monuments are carved into cliffs. Water is captured and guided through an environment where water should vanish. Tombs are everywhere. The living move through a landscape shaped by the dead. This is not only urban planning, it is a philosophy carved into geography. The Nabataeans built a civilization in a place that should have resisted civilization. They made the desert speak. And when a people can make the desert speak, you should be careful before assuming their tombs were simple. A sealed tomb is never just a sealed tomb. Sealing is an act of intention. To seal something is to say, this boundary matters. Something belongs inside. Something must be preserved. Something must not be disturbed. Something must remain in darkness until the correct time, or perhaps forever. Modern people break seals because they want information. Ancient people created seals because they understood power. A sealed chamber changes the meaning of everything around it. It creates an inside and an outside, a known and an unknown, a permitted world and a forbidden one. And if such a chamber is beneath a monument like the Treasury, then the facade may function like a public face over a private mystery. The visible stone says, "Look here." The sealed tomb says, "But you cannot enter the real center." This is one of the oldest principles of esoteric architecture. The outer form attracts the eye. The inner chamber holds the secret. The crowd sees the surface. The initiated understand the depth. Petra may have operated the same way. To the traveler, it was a city. To the merchant, it was a hub. To the ruler, it was power. To the dead, it was a passage. To those who understood the symbols, it may have been a threshold carved into the earth itself. And this is why the treasury still feels alive. Not because of magic in the childish sense, but because places hold intention. A place that has been approached with awe for 2,000 years becomes saturated with human attention. Every traveler who stopped there, every prayer whispered there, every burial sealed there, every legend attached to it, every generation that looked at it and felt something beyond explanation. All of that becomes part of the monument's invisible weight. This is why people do not simply look at Petra. They feel Petra. They feel the canyon closing behind them. They feel the sudden reveal. They feel the stone towering over them. They feel that something is watching from the red cliffs. And perhaps that feeling is not accidental. Perhaps that feeling is the architecture working exactly as intended. The question is not whether the Nabataeans had our categories of religion, archaeology, or tourism. They did not. The question is whether they understood how to create sacred pressure, a place where the human mind becomes smaller, the stone becomes larger, the dead become present, and the invisible becomes almost audible. That is Petra's true power. Now return to the tomb. 12 bodies, artifacts, a chamber beneath the monument. A discovery immediately turned into global fascination. Why did the story spread so quickly? Because it touched something ancient in us, not just curiosity, recognition. Human beings are drawn to the idea that the visible world has a hidden underside, a city beneath the city, a chamber beneath the monument, a message beneath the myth, a truth beneath the official explanation. We are drawn to this because deep down, we know reality is layered. Your own life is layered. There is the face you show the world, and there is the chamber beneath it. There is the story people know, and there's the sealed room of memory, grief, fear, longing, and power underneath. This is why ancient tombs fascinate us. They remind us that nothing truly disappears. It is buried. It waits. It presses upward from beneath the surface. Petra's sealed tomb is powerful because it mirrors the human condition. The treasury is the mask. The tomb is the truth below the mask. The facade is what the world photographs. The chamber is what the world forgot. And if that does not describe modern life, what does? We live in a civilization obsessed with facades, images, profiles, surfaces, visible success, performative beauty, monuments of identity carved for others to admire. But beneath every facade there is a tomb, something unspoken, something inherited, something buried, something that gives the surface its weight. The Nabataeans may have known this. They may have understood that the visible and invisible must be joined, that no great structure stands without an underworld, that no civilization lives unless it knows where its dead are. And this is what the modern world has lost. We build upward and forget downward. We chase light and fear darkness. We preserve images and abandon memory. But Petra does not allow that separation. Petra says the monument and the tomb are one system. The living and the dead are one city. The surface and the depth cannot be separated. This is why the discovery beneath the treasury matters. Not because it proves every legend, not because it gives us a simple answer, but because it reopens the correct question. What was Petra really designed to do to the human soul? Was it built to impress travelers? Yes. Was it built to display wealth and power? Probably. Was it connected to burial, ancestry, and sacred memory? Almost certainly. But beneath all of that, it may have served a deeper function. Petra taught the visitor how to pass through threshold, through the desert, through the seek, through shadow, through stone, through awe, through death, through memory. And perhaps that is why the treasury stands where it stands, not merely as a building, but as a final face before the hidden chamber below, a mask of civilization over the mystery of mortality, a carved announcement that says, the dead are not gone, they are beneath the world you think you understand. And if you listened carefully from the beginning, you may now realize why I did not ask for your like at the start. Because this video was not asking for agreement, it was asking for attention. And attention is the first act of initiation. If this investigation changed the way you see Petra, now you can like the video. Not as a habit, not because every channel asks, but because you stayed long enough to earn your own answer. And if you want to go even deeper, comment these words. The tomb was a threshold, because those who understand that sentence understand the entire mystery. Petra's secret was never only under the treasury. It was in the relationship between what is shown and what is hidden, between the face of the monument and the chamber below, between the living who arrive in wonder and the dead who wait in silence. For 2,000 years, Petra stood in the desert like a locked book. Tourists saw the cover. Legends searched for gold. Films turned it into a doorway to fantasy. Headlines turned the tomb into a spectacle. But the deeper message was quieter. The Nabataeans carved memory into stone. They placed death beneath beauty. They turned the mountain into a witness. And they left behind a question that still has not stopped echoing through the canyon. What if the greatest treasure of Petra was never hidden in the urn, never buried as gold, never sealed as an object? What if the true treasure was the knowledge that every visible world is built over an invisible one? The treasury was not just a monument. It was a warning. Look at the surface for too long, and you will miss the chamber beneath. Look at the chamber deeply enough, and the whole surface begins to change. This is Petra's sealed mystery, not a single answer, not a solved headline, not a fantasy of curses and treasure, a threshold, a reminder that ancient people may have understood something modern people forgot, that the dead are not outside the city, they are under it. That memory is not behind us. It is beneath us. That stone is not silent. It is only waiting for someone to ask the right question. And now that the tomb beneath Petra has opened again, the question is no longer what they found down there. The question is what opened in us when we finally looked below.